Okay guys, this is what the finished painting looks like. I did add a little bit more after I stopped recording. I just wasn't done. I felt like it needed more detail, and I added more laciness with the dry brush technique here at the top. So feel free to add that to your painting. You can use this photo as a reference if you like. And the video is really long. I'm sorry. I'm just not an editor. I don't know how to edit it or speed things up. So feel free to skip through it as you like. I have no problem with that at all. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments, and please show me your creation. Hi guys. I'm here today to do the demo of the ocean with the seafoam on the beach that some of you asked for. So I apologize ahead of time if you can hear football in the background. My hubby's got the TV turned up pretty loud, but hopefully you can hear me okay. And I'm gonna apologize ahead. I've never made a video before, so this is gonna be really rough. But at least hopefully it'll be a demo that you can follow so that you can paint this yourself, because it was really, really fun to paint. So I'll start out with showing you my colors that I picked. Sorry, I have a cold. These are the colors that I'm going to do for my painting. You do not have to have these same colors. You do not have to have these same brands of paint. Please don't go out and spend a lot of money buying expensive paint for just this painting. This is very, very forgiving. You can use colors that are similar, or whatever colors you want your ocean to be. I used to live in Hawaii, and these are the colors of the ocean that I am accustomed to, that I used to seeing. But other parts of the world, the ocean looks different. So use what colors you want. I always pull my colors out when I'm planning a painting so I can put them together and make sure that I think they're going to be cohesive and harmonious with each other. So I actually did several little combinations before I decided on these four for my ocean and these two for my sand. So I've got Michael Harding Phthalo Blue Lake, Daniel Smith Phthalo Turquoise, Michael Harding Hooker's Green, A. Gallo Ultramarine Turquoise, A. Gallo Buff Titanium, and Michael Harding Yellow Ochre. And these two I mixed together to make the sand. I want the sand kind of opaque. I don't want it really transparent like the ocean. And it also kind of tones down the yellow here, and the yellow ochre makes a really nice sand color. So these are the colors I chose, and choose which ones you really want. You can use 3 or 4 colors for your ocean. It'll look good either way. And here's some of them right here that I have. My Daniel Smith and Michael Harding, and a couple of them. My A. Gallows I don't have in tubes, of course, because A. Gallo is only sold in pans, but I've already put some onto my palette. This is just an acrylic board that I use for painting on. I have it tilted up with a little maybe inch-high object here, maybe not even quite an inch, just to give me a little bit of a tilt to the board. Helps me with my neck while I'm painting. Also helps the paint to move a little bit. It's not a big incline, but enough to where the paint will move a little bit. So other supplies we're going to be using. We're going to use this white Crayola crayon. You can also use a white candle. We're going to be using wax resist in this painting. We're also going to be using a lot of wet in wet for the ocean. We're going to do a dry brush technique for the seafoam. And we're also going to do some splattering for a little bit of the water and also on the sand to give it that fine texture for the sand. I also am using Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. You can get this. I got this at Hobby Lobby for $10, and it lasts a long time as long as you keep the cap on and keep it moist inside. This is water-based, but it is not watercolor paint. It's something different. It's not gouache either. It is very opaque, which is why I like it. I can even add a little water into it to thin it out for spattering, and it still stays nice and opaque as long as I don't add a ton. So this stuff is great. I always have some on hand. And when I use it, I use a little container like this to pour it into because I have ruined these before by dipping my brush in there to get some pigment and not realizing I didn't quite rinse all of the pigment out of my brush and contaminated it. So my advice, pour some in a little container for your use. Another supply I'm going to be using, and you do not have to use this. You don't have to use the bleed proof white either. You can also use white gouache if you like. I just prefer the bleed proof white. I use this here. This is QOR Watercolor Medium. It's a synthetic oxgall. You do not have to use this. The reason I use this is because I live in a very, very dry climate. And when I wet my paper, it dries very, very quickly, often before I can get my paint down that I wanted. So I use this. I've already fixed this, but I get a small jar of water. I put 3 drops in there, stir it up with a paintbrush, and then use this clean water to wet my paper. And it actually gives me several extra minutes to work on my painting before it dries. So I like this stuff. I got it from Amazon. If you live in a dry climate or have problems with your paper drying really fast, this might be helpful to you. And now my brushes. These are the brushes I'm going to use for this painting. I'll start with my Escoda Ultimo size 18. It's a synthetic brush. Absolutely love this brush. It's probably my absolute favorite. As you can see, it's a synthetic. It does hold a lot of water though, a ton, and it comes to the tiniest little point. So it's great for, you can even do certain details with it, not fine details, but you can paint around a lot of things with it, and you can do some details with this brush, which is one of the reasons I just love it. It's very versatile. My next brush, also Escoda. It's a size 0 rigger brush. I have several rigger brushes, but this is my absolute favorite. I love it, and I will be using it for some of the seafoam details. The next one is a Da Vinci number 2, Kolinsky Sable from Germany. This, I know it doesn't look great right now, but when you wet it, it does come to a nice point, and this is pretty good for details. It's one of my favorite detail brushes that we'll be doing on some of the foam. I may or may not use this one, but I've got it handy in case I need it. This one is a very, very inexpensive brush. It's a number 6 round Emma Lefebvre brush from Craftimo. Very inexpensive, synthetic. It's very stiff and springy, and I'll be using this for our dry brush technique. And I don't mind using a cheap brush for the dry brush technique because you kind of use the side of your brush and you kind of scrub it a little bit, and that's something I don't want to do with one of my nice brushes. So this is a pretty good one for making that seafoam. And then my last 2 brushes here are little scrubber brushes. I've got a soft one. I don't know if you can see the bend there. And then this one is much stiffer. This first one is a Royal and Langnickel Zen brush number 6. This is nice for making soft blended edges. That's why I like this one, and because it's softer, it's very easy on your paper. I'll be using this for when I make the shadow on the edge of the seafoam as it touches the sand to blend the edges out so we don't have a hard edge there. And then this last one, very, very stiff brush and very small bristles. So this is really good for when we're going to actually splatter on our sand. It creates a very, very fine texture and very nice looking sand. So we're going to use, you'll want to use some kind of really stiff little brush like that. You can even use a toothbrush. Will give you kind of the same effect. Not quite as much control as a small one like this, but if you cover your paper well, cover your ocean part, you can even use a toothbrush to do that. It's no problem. This is the palette I'm using today. It is just a ceramic plate. So all of my colors are here, my 4 ocean colors, and then I've got my yellow ochre here and some of my buff titanium over here, and they've sort of mixed together already, which is fine. That's what we're going to do anyway. So that's my little palette that I'm using. And then the last thing, our paper. Today I'm using the Hanamula watercolor paper, 640 grams or 300 pounds. So it's a very thick, nice thick paper. You do not have to use thick paper. I'm also using rough. You can see here, it is the rough. That's really going to help us when we do the dry brush technique to give us a really nice texture. It'll work beautifully. You can, however, use whatever paper you have. I wouldn't really recommend hot press, but I have done this painting on a regular 140 pound 300 GSM cold press paper, and it works fine. It works beautifully. So just the rough here is going to help us a little bit with our texture. And this is on a block, so I'm not having to tape it down or anything. I started my drawing, as you can see here. I just drew a kind of a random line for the edge of our shoreline. This is going to be our sand down here. And I sort of did a little lacy pattern with my pencil for the seafoam, for part of the seafoam. So you don't need a drawing or a traceable for this, obviously. You can just do a very random squiggly line. The rough paper helps with that too, helps give you a lot of texture on the edge, and just random lines here. The reason I went ahead and I drew this one kind of dark so that I can make sure that you see it. You should be able to see a lot of this as well. I drew it out because I've done this before, this painting before, and I didn't draw these lines out. And so as I was using my wax resist, I couldn't see where I had already been. I couldn't see where my lines were. So this will just help with that a bit. I did start a little bit with the wax resist. I just went from here, I got to about here, and then my video got interrupted, so I started over. So I'm just gonna start from right here and do our wax resist. I'm pressing kind of hard because I wanna make sure I'm laying down some wax there. It'll really help separate our ocean from our sand and help when we are putting down our foam. So I'm just gonna kind of trace over some of these. Just a plain white crayon works great for this. Try to remember what I've already traced on, hopefully. And it doesn't have to be perfect. These I wanted a little bit lighter because my bleed-proof white is going to be in thinner lines out here, and it's going to be thicker here, so I'm not worried about this being covered. And if I miss some of these lines, it's okay. We can always add them in later with our bleed-proof white, not a problem. We'll take a look at the painting later and see if it needs more foam added. Okay, hopefully that about did it. Okay, I'm going to start with my big Escoda size 18. You can also use what you have. If you have a mop brush that you like, you can use that. You can use a flat wash. Use whatever larger brush you have. Just make sure that you're covering. So I'm going to dip this in my clean water that had the watercolor medium in it. I'm going to start wetting this down really well. I'm going to try to stay within my wax line here. Go ahead and wet your paper down. Lots of water. Don't be afraid to use too much water here. This is what we want. Okay, that is pretty wet. I'm going to give it a minute and let this soak in and add even more water on top of it because I want the paper to stay nice and wet while I'm laying down color. I'm going to take a little spray bottle here and wet down my paints that have dried since the last time I did this painting, so I need to reactivate them. Give this another minute or so to sink in. Really hope you guys like this tutorial. Please let me know if you do, and I'll see if I can get better equipment and make a little higher quality videos. Maybe take a Skillshare class on how to be a content creator, which I don't know if I've got time for that, but I'd like to be better at it. So I'm going to add it some more water. I want it to be nice and wet. Lots of water. I don't know if you can see it, but I've got quite a bit of water down here right at the bottom because my paper is tilted. So water is going to collect in certain places. So what I'm doing now, I have a paper towel over here that I'm using to blot my brush, and I'm picking up any puddles that I see because I do want it evenly wet, but I don't want puddles. I've got quite a bit of puddling down over here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now we're going to go in with our color. I'm going to just do a few spots of green here and there. Very random. Not too much of the green. One of the supplies I should have mentioned earlier too, we are going to use a spray bottle of water, so have that handy as well. Sorry I didn't mention it. I just always think of it as being there, so. Okay, I'm gonna go in here with our aquamarine. And one of the things that I'm gonna do with this painting is you want your darker colors to be out toward the top of your painting. Your colors are going to be lighter and more muted toward the shore. And that's because the ocean gets deeper as you go out, right? So as it gets deeper, the colors get darker. So I started light. I'm going to go with the darker color now. I'm blotting my brush. I'm going to add some more of this lighter turquoise in here toward the front. I know it doesn't look like an ocean yet, but it will, I promise. Now I'm going to go in with my darkest color here. I want to make sure it's really saturated here in the back. And I don't want too much of the dark stuff toward the front. Okay, so I think that's good for right now. Rinse my brush, and we're going to do a little bit of spraying here. nice and wet. We're going to do some blending on the page here. So I'm going to tilt it. Let some of that color go. Let it blend on the paper. I'm going to go back with my brush and pick up some of these puddles. We don't want those puddles there because it'll leave a big blob of color in that spot. And we don't want blobs. We want it nice and blended. So I'm wiping the water off of my brush and just coming and sopping some of it up. Just to keep it nice and even here. Okay, so this is good for our first layer. We're going to let this dry and we will come back in and add more color after it is dry. Okay guys, I'm back. This is nice and dry. You can tell by feeling it with the back of your hand. If it still feels cool to the touch, it's not quite dry yet in the middle. It might feel dry on the surface, but the center isn't dry. So this is nice and dry. This is not going to be our final color. We're going to add another layer to this. So let's start by wetting our paper again. Not going to get it quite as wet as I did the last time. But I do want it wet, just not sopping wet. Okay. I'm kind of turning my head to the side so I can see the sheen, make sure I didn't miss any spots and don't have puddles. Okay, now we're going to drop some more colors in. Our green sort of disappeared, so I'm going to add a little bit of that in, add it back in because it faded away on us. I do like the green. Maybe a hint of seaweed or something underneath. Although I have to say the beaches in Hawaii don't have a seaweed problem. Okay, more colors. Don't you love painting without really much of an underdrawing? Just being able to kind of freewheel it, just kind of wing it. I do. I love that part, that aspect of watercolor painting. Let's get some more darker colors in here. Just randomly. And then I want my darkest phthalo blue in the deep part of the water. Just have fun with this part. This is supposed to be fun. More dark in the back. And again, I'm going to use my spray to help blend some of the paint here. Just a little, not too much. And we're going to let the paint blend together a little bit. Tilting, let the paint run. Let it do its thing. Let the paint be in charge. something I always have trouble with, right? Those of us who are kind of have tendencies toward perfectionism, we always have trouble with this part, right? Letting the paint do what it wants to do. Okay, this is good. This is good. I like this. A little more blending here. Yeah, that looks great. So I like how this is coming out. The second layer, as you see, is much deeper color because, as we all know, right, in watercolor, we don't, if we want a dark, deep color, we don't go in with a dark color. We paint in layers, and that's going to give us depth. You can already see we've got some depth going on here in the water. You can see parts that looked uneven and deeper than others, and you can see that this front part, because we kept it lighter, looks more shallow, and the darker part in the back looks more deep. So this is coming along really good. I might add some more darks here in the back after this layer has dried because I'd like this part a little bit darker still, but we're gonna let it dry at this point again, and we'll come back to it when it's dry. Okay guys, we're ready for the next layer. Gonna wet this part again. Just this back part, not the whole thing, because I just want to drop some color, some concentrated color here in the back. So I'm using very little water with my paint, mostly paint. At the darkest dark in the back. And that'll give us the illusion that the water's getting really deep there. I'm gonna use just a little bit of spray, maybe. Help soften those edges a little bit. A little bit more dark here. And a couple of other little spots that might be a little bit deeper. I'll spray there, and we'll let it mix a little bit out here on the page. We don't want it completely smoothed out. We don't want blobs either. I'm going to keep it tilted. I'll give it another little spray here. Beautiful. Love it. Okay, so I'm going to rinse my brush. Dab it just a tiny bit, but it's still pretty wet. And I'm just going to smooth these edges. Just don't want any hard edges here. There we go. Very nice. Okay, that looks great. And we're gonna let that part dry, but we can start working on our sand now. So that's what I'm gonna do. Oops, got a little bit of, didn't quite get my brush rinsed out all the way. So I'm gonna clean it off really well. I'm actually gonna get part of this part wet as well, because we're going to paint a little bit of sand in there too, because as the water gets close to the shore, it's very shallow, and some of that sand is going to show through the other side. So we want to be able to capture that. I'll just get this nice and wet here. really careful going over your blue here. You don't want to disturb the paint that's already there, reactivate it and have it come back on you. So rinse out my brush. And I'm going to take some of this yellow ochre mixed with the buff titanium. I'm going to start putting in sand. And streaks like this is kind of what I like, because as the wave comes up and washes back, it sort of leaves a pattern like that in the sand. Those of you who spend a lot of time at the beach have probably noticed that. So I'm just going to put that in there. Paint our sand in here. And I'm going to do some sand in here too. Little bit of sand underneath there. And you can see our wax resist is working really well here on some of my edges. Some of the others not as well. But we've got our basic sand color in there. And again, I'm going to wet my brush and just make sure that my edges are blended out here. No hard edges. No hard edges. Okay, lovely. I do see a spot here. It concerns me. I don't want a puddle right there. Okay. All right. This is looking good. I think I want a little bit more sand color over here. A little bit darker. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that, and we're going to let all of this dry completely before we move on to the next part of our painting. Next part, we're going to start putting in the foam. It'll be fun. Be right back. Okay, guys, I thought I was done with the ocean, but when it dried, it's a little bit lighter than I would like, and I feel like I'm missing most of these turquoise tones. So I'm actually going to re-wet my paper and add some more of the turquoise in there. And this is just part of watercolor, right? We paint in layers. That's what's gonna give our painting depth and life. So I'm just gonna drop some more turquoise into some of these areas I feel are lacking. I want to leave the dark on this side. I want this to be the darkest. So I'm just going to leave that dark blue there, but I want to add some more turquoise into here because I feel like it's lacking. I think when we spray with water, right, it's diluting our paint. And so even though we need the water to help our paints run together, it does dilute the colors some. So I'm going to go ahead and let this blend together. And it's okay for it to look a little bit on the blotchy side because the water's not going to be all one color in the ocean, right? It's going to be a lot of different colors in there. So I'm just going to smooth out the edge here. No hard edges. No hard edges anywhere. Just a damp brush. Okay. Same on the bottom here. No hard edges, please. Okay, that's looking pretty fantastic. I'm going to let that dry. Hopefully that was our last layer on the ocean part. Should be. I'll know for sure once it dries, and then we can start working on our foam. Okay, guys, here we are again with a nice dry painting. I just looked in my viewfinder and my colors are actually much more vivid in person than they are on the video. Sorry about that. I am not a professional videographer. It is what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on some of the seafoam. So I'm going to open my bleed proof white here. And you can use a paintbrush for this if you like. I'm just going to take my palette knife and get some out here and put it in my little container. Just like that, and I'll work out of here for a bit. I might end up using all of that and needing more, but that's okay. All right. This is my stiffer brush, small but stiffer. I'm going to get it a little wet. Dab off the water. I'm going to start with my seafoam here, and we're going to go right across the edge and just drag it like this. And let the texture of the paper do some of the work there for us. You can see how it leaves kind of a lacy type of look as I'm dragging this across. Making sure that my brush isn't too wet. If it is, you won't get this nice dry brush effect here. This I really like. I'm going to make it a little bit thicker, foamier on the edge here, also to cover my pencil line. I'm going to cover that up there. Drag it across. Kind of blend it a little bit. Okay, this is where it gets really tedious. But I choose to look at it as relaxing. If you don't have a lot of patience, this part's going to be tough for you. But just relax into it. Let the paint do what it's going to do. Let the texture of the paper help you. Pull it across. Let it do its little thing. See, we're already getting some nice seafoam here. Still got a long way to go on this painting, but this is the part that takes the longest, besides all the drying time, is making all the seafoam. So I will probably skip through a lot of this. Either I will try to fast forward through this part, or or maybe just skip ahead so it's not so tedious if I can't figure out how to fast forward, since I haven't used this video editing equipment before. So we'll see how well I can do with that. And dragging and dragging. Here we go. I am liking this so far. I don't want my seafoam to be too uniform, so I'm just going to drag bits of it out here and there so we don't have a line across anywhere. I love this dry brush effect. Love it. Love it. Okay. I'm going to switch to my detail brush here, my little Da Vinci number 2. And I'm going to start going over some of my bits of crayon resist. I want these to disappear into nothing. I don't want there to be hard edge at the end there. So I'm not going to put a thick line here. I'm going to let the paper do some of my work again and let the brush kind of skip over the paper so we're not having hard lines. I love this part. This is actually really fun. I find it relaxing. I do find I enjoy this more, a little bit more, on the rough paper than I did cold pressed, because the rough paper is doing some of my work for me here, making it easier to get these broken lines and easier to make the textured foam. Adding more. lines of the foam here. And of course, none of this has to be exact. In nature, this is all going to be random shapes, right? So I'm not following exactly. We are going where the water takes us. Okay. We have a mark on the paper here. I don't know if you can see it, but I can see it. It looks as if something drug across the page, like maybe my palette knife or my pencil or something. And so we're just going to take that as a happy accident. And see, do we need to add any more of these? I think maybe not, but maybe some more dry brushing. And kind of is what I'm feeling right now. I'm really liking this dry brush effect and think I might want some more of it further out here. Trying to get rid of these lines. I don't want my lines to appear, but when you first put your brush down, it does kind of leave a mark, especially if you didn't dab your brush off well enough, like I did. Try to dab the brush and use a light touch in the beginning. Okay, really liking this. Alrighty, so I think we're gonna do some more detail stuff here. Back to my detail brush. And I want to add a lot more really little details. I know I'm kind of starting to get to the end of my painting if I start hitting up the details. So I want to add a lot of little swirls of water. Just random. Remember, no straight lines, because that's just not how nature does it. Yeah. I'm not sure this detail brush is giving me the small, tiny lines that I want. Let me try a different detail brush. I might need to add a little bit of water here too. With a little bit thinner paint, I can do tinier lines. Yeah, this is a very cheap detail brush, size 0. I don't know, you can see the manufacturer. I don't recall the name off the top of my head. This was a set of like, I don't know, 15 brushes. They were super cheap. And because I had so many of them in there, I figured it never hurts to have a bunch of cheap brushes that I can abuse if necessary. And sometimes you end up with some decent brushes that you really like. So for this application, I actually really like this one. And they don't have to be, the lines don't have to be completely contiguous either. You can have breaks in them. That is perfectly acceptable. Let's see. Oh, that was a little bit too thick. Let's see if I can pick up a little bit of it. Yeah, maybe not. The bleed proof white is pretty good about staying put, but that is okay. This is what I wanted. These are really fine little lines here. Just sort of trail off. This is what I'm looking for. Get some more of these in here. Just randomness. They're almost like tree branches, kind of. All right, keep going. Keep adding details. these attached here a little bit, adding some more where I feel like there's too much dark space. We want the foam to be very white. I have more white space that I would like to create. I'm going to go back to my stiff brush. A little bit of water. I want it a little thinner than it was before. I'm going to add just some more flourishes here and there. To the foam. I want the foam to be thicker in some areas. White in here, as I want parts of the foam to be thicker and more visible. Okay, this is good. I definitely like this thicker foam here. I need some more water. Get this to painting consistency. So it's not quite so thick. I don't want these hard lines. So I'm going to blend them out here. And I love how this is working on this rough paper. I think whenever I do oceans in the future, I'm going to use my rough paper. I really like it. Some more water here. I need to connect this to the shore a little bit. And maybe over here as well. There's some randomness to our waves, to our foam, I should say. Make sure I'm not leaving hard edges here. Take care of these edges before they dry. Soften these edges. Beautiful. Beautiful. I like it. I think we need some more white in this foam here that's coming up to the edge. And make sure that my edges are all plenty white, as this is where the foam is the thickest. So I'm using a little bit thicker paint because I want it really, really opaque right here at the edge. And yes, I'm going to go back and blend those edges in. Use my texture of my paper to kind of blend them out. Love that. Beautiful. I love the texture here. Getting some really beautiful texture. Okay. All right. I think we're just about ready to move on to the next phase. A few more details here, although I'm using the wrong brush. Definitely using the wrong brush. I should have switched back to my small detail brush. To get the really fine lines that I'd like. Okay. All right, I think we're almost there. What we're going to do next is we're going to paint a shadow at the edge of our wave. That will make it look more three-dimensional if we put a shadow there. So I just took our paints that we are already using and mixed up a shadow color here. You can use any shadow color you like. And I'm just putting it right at the edge of the wave. Make sure it's nice and jagged. And then I'm going to use my blending brush just to blend it out and make sure we don't have a harsh line. Soften that right there. And see how that makes it look like a shadow right there. Gives more dimension in that spot. Definitely makes it more look more three-dimensional. And then before this dries, go in with my blending brush and soften. All right, the next segment here. And I'm purposely making this jagged. We want it jagged. The water's not going to be really super smooth. Add some more shadow here. Okay, we're getting there, folks. We're getting there. We really are getting close to the end of our painting here. I did get my brush into a little bit of that white paint. Probably should have let it dry more, but I can go back in there with more shadow once it's dry. No problem. There's a nice soft line. I love this lifting brush. It's not the greatest at lifting. Like if you really want to lift a spot, it's not the best, but it is really good for blending edges. So it's one of my favorite blenders. And then now you can see how this added some dimension to our wave. And I'm going to try to lift a little bit of this turquoise that seeped over. It's okay. I'm not too disturbed about this little bit of turquoise that seeped over. It's really okay. It's not going to be super noticeable. So let's finish this here. Just a little bit of blending. Okay. I'll leave that as it is for now. Let me check. And we're going to use our really stiff brush. I'm going to get it wet. And then I'm going to, you know what, I need to mask off my ocean water. So I'm going to get some paper towel here. I'm going to put it over my waves in the parts where I don't want any splatter to occur. So put it over here and put it up here as well. And I will take my stiff brush, got a little damp, and I actually just got a little bit of burnt umber, which, sorry I didn't tell you about in the beginning, but I'm just going to use burnt umber. It's a good color to splatter on the sand. So as you can see, hopefully you can see on the camera, that it splatters very, very fine. Add some more, dab it, and splatter very, very fine. And it just gives us a nice texture to our beach instead of just a flat wash. We've got something with texture to it, a little bit more like sand. Hopefully you can see that on camera. I can see it. Hopefully you can see it. Sorry about my dogs barking in the background there. My splattering is not going as well on this side. Here we go. Now it is. I'm going to get out a little bit more of the burnt umber. I'm running out here. Sorry, I know this is not the most professional job ever. There we go. There's some real. Now I've got some. I evidently did not have enough on my brush before. And now this is working very nicely. Get a little bit more. And like I said, a toothbrush will do this as well. Can give you this same type of texture. If you're not sure, just splatter it on a scrap piece of paper so you can get an idea of how to aim it directionally, and also what size particles you're going to get with the splatter. There we go. I do have a little bit here that I wish had some of the splatter, so I'm gonna add some right there. Very good. Excellent. I got a little bit right here, so I'm just gonna take it up with a damp brush. No problem. Came right up. Excellent. Okay, and then the last part. I'm going to rinse my brush really well. And then I'm going to do a little bit of white splatter on my foam. So I'm going to take this paint. I'm going to add a little bit of water to it to thin it out just a little bit. And we'll do a little bit of splatter of the white. I'm trying to avoid my sand, although it's not going to show up great on the sand because the sand's already a light color. It's going to show up more on my water here. More. Sorry about my husband playing the music super loud in the next room. He's got the TV so loud. Sorry about that. Okay, a little bit of white here, so I'm just going to take it up with a damp brush. Okay, a couple splatters here that are a little too big. I'm going to smooth those out. And that's it, guys. I mean, you can feel free to play with it some more. You can add more shadow if you'd like. You can add more details back here, more little swirls of water. Sometimes it's nice to add just some dabs here and there of white, like this. So that's all I'm gonna do, folks. I'm just gonna dab water. Dab more white here and there, add some more details, and our painting is done. So have fun with it. Please like it if you did enjoy this tutorial. I don't know if I'm ever going to do more of them or not. I guess it depends on if there's a need for it, and if people like it, then I'll put forth the effort and teach you guys what I'm learning. So hope you like it. Hope you enjoy yours. I would absolutely love it if you would come onto the Facebook group and post your version. I would love to see what you create from these techniques. So please come back and show me, and like the video if you like it. All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye.